All right, so up at the top on the factoring polynomials page, the very last box right here says slip and slide. And I've learned several methods throughout my years on how to deal with polynomials when they have a leading coefficient other than 1. Remember yesterday we had a 1 here. But if you, I don't want to use that. But if instead of having a 1 there, you have some other number like ax squared plus bx plus c. This is not a 1, and it's not a GCF, right? If it's a GCF, like box 49, 50, and 51, great. But what if it's not a GCF like those three? How are we going to deal with it? Well, we're going to I'm going to teach you something today called the slip and slide rule. If you took Algebra 1 at Grossmont, you may have learned something similar called the master product. Master product works too. When I was in high school, my Algebra 1 teacher taught me something called guess and check. Guess and check was horrible. It took forever. You basically had to write all the possible combinations it could be, and then you had to FOIL each of them out and see which one worked. Okay, so slip and slide is going to be a lot faster. It's very similar to what we did yesterday. There's just an extra step, not 20 extra steps like when I was in high school. And here's how it works. All right. So if you look down at box number 57, you first want to check and see if there's a GCF. It looks like there's a GCF, but there's not, right? 2 goes into 2 and 2 goes into 6, but 2 does not go into 13 evenly. You guys see that? Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take that A and you're going to multiply it by the 6, whatever the third term is, okay? Then you're just going to rewrite your trinomial as m squared minus 13m plus 12. So I slipped it over. I'm going to have to slide it back in just a second. So this is the slip. The slip is taking that A and multiplying it by the C. Okay? Now we're going to factor it just like we did yesterday. We're going to write our 2 sets of parentheses for our binomial times our binomial. We're going to take the square root of m squared, which is m times m. And then we're going to find out what multiplies to get positive 12, but adds or subtracts to get negative 13. Negative 1 and negative 12. Okay? It looks like we should be done, but we're not done. We have to do the slide, right? We did the slip, now we have to do the slide. The slide is now we have to slide that 2 here, and we have to divide by 2 and divide by 2. Bless you. If the number is easily divisible by that, like 12 is divisible by 2, it goes in there 6 times, we just write this as m minus 6. But if it's going to remain a fraction, we need to slide it back over here, and this becomes 2m minus 1. And we end up with a leading coefficient on one of the binomials, sometimes 2 of the binomials. Okay, let's look at box number, well, let's do 54 first. I think 54 is easier than 53. So in box number 54, we check and see if there's a GCF. Looks like it's going to be, but no, 4 does not go into 25 evenly. Okay, so we're going to do our slip. We're going to multiply that 4 by the 25, and we have h squared minus 20h, and then what's 25 times 4? 100. Okay, so that's our trinomial. We're going to write our 2 sets of parentheses for our binomial times our binomial. We're going to take the square root of h squared, which is h and h, then we're going to see what two numbers multiply to get positive 100, but add or subtract to get negative 20.
Negative 10.
I think they're both negative, right? Because a negative times a negative is a positive, right? So it's negative 10 and negative 10. So they're both the same at this point, right? Well, they're going to both be the same, okay? Then we need to divide by the 4. That's our slide. And we can reduce it, right? 10 over 4, we can reduce because they're both divisible by 2. So this is 5 halves and 5 halves. But then we need to slide that 2 over. So that becomes 2h minus 5 and 2h minus 5. You can write it just like that. That's perfectly fine. Or you can say 2h minus 5 quantity squared. And just write or, because I will accept either answer. They're both perfectly acceptable. All right, you might need a calculator for box number 53. Okay, first you want to check and see if there's a GCF. There's not, right? So we want to take that a, which is 6, and multiply it by 18, which leaves us with k squared plus 31k. And then you got to take your calculator and multiply 8 times 6. 18. No, sorry, I said that wrong. 18 times 6. So 108. So we're going to write our 2 sets of parentheses for our binomial times our binomial. We're going to take the square root of k squared, which is k, so k and k. Our signs are plus and plus. We need 2 numbers that are going to multiply to get 108, but are also going to add or subtract to get 31. 108 is an even number, and if you think about 8, just above 100, so kind of think, okay, what would 108 be divisible by? What did you get? 4, right? It's likely divisible by 4. So if you take 108 and divide it by 4, you're going to see that that goes in there 27 times. And 27 plus 4 is 31. Okay, so it's 27 and 4. All right, looks like we're done, but we're not. We need to do our slide. Right, we already did our slip. Let's do our slide. So let's divide by 6 and divide by 6. I'm going to start with this one because it looks easier, right? So these are both divisible by 2. This is 2 and this is 3. So when I slide that 3 over, I get 3k plus 2. That's one of our binomials that has a leading coefficient, right? And 27 and 6. Doesn't look like they can reduce, but they can. They're both divisible by what? 3. So 3 goes into 27 9 times, and 3 goes into 6 twice. So I need to slide that 2. So I have 2k plus 9.